Can you hear me? Surprisingly, I'm not drinking a beer. I'm drinking a LaCroix. I'm just by myself in it looks like a Black Void, but it's really just my living room. Like everybody is doing everything these days. Well, anywho. My name is Brian Morrow. I'm a filmmaker. I live in Los Angeles. 10 years ago, I started two companies, but they basically have the same name, Shark Pig and Shark Pig Weddings. Shark Pig! One of them makes fancy wedding videos, and until this year, we would travel all around the world, shooting around 100 weddings a year. And then the other company is a commercial production company that mostly makes advertisements, but we did make one movie, and I am going to shamelessly plug the film. I highly suggest, especially if you're just sitting around in a pandemic watching everything, that you check out the documentary I produced. It's called Hal, H-A-L. It's about Hal Ashby, who was a filmmaker in the 70s and 80s. It's good, and I worked on it for 5 years of my life, so maybe you could just spend 90 minutes watching it and then hit me up and tell me what you think, because I believe it's definitely the best thing I've ever made. Anyway, besides being a filmmaker and an entrepreneur, I'm a fairly new dad. I have a 14-month-old daughter who is the light of my life. Actually, she and my sweetheart, her mother, are out of town, just sort of like getting out of town for a minute in a cabin up in the mountains, just relaxing. So I have the place to myself, which means that I can be completely loud and irreverent during this whole thing, which is probably good. Is a benefit for you guys at least, and certainly a little bit more comfortable for me. And yeah, I'm a public speaker. About 5 years ago, I started getting into this arena because I had an urge to share a perspective about some of the sort of more fundamental things that glue together all those different areas of my life. What it means to be a creative in this age, in this era. And so every time that I did one of these public speaking gigs, which range from, I've gotten to speak to like master's students at business schools, to conferences like way up north, and to sort of more whimsical conferences like Field Trip or Camp in California. I've gotten to do like hands-on workshops that are more focused on like info-rich stuff, like how to do video editing or whatever, all the way down to the thing that I really love are the kind of fundamentals of creativity and why it's so important. And that is what I'm always talking about, even though I always rewrite my talk every single time. I don't ever sort of rehash my material, except I also always rehash my material because I am always trying to convince people of how valuable it is to get in touch with their creativity. So that is what this talk is going to be about. And just so everyone can pace themselves, I can tell you sort of like the chapters of what we're going to go through. The first chapter is the world is changing. The second chapter is change generates potential. The third chapter is creativity is potent. The fourth chapter is what stops us. And the fifth chapter is let's do it.
Let's do it.
So let's do it. Let's get into it. The world is changing. Wow. It sure is. I know that the pandemic, especially in Europe, is in a different place than it is in Los Angeles. Currently, the pandemic is Los Angeles County, where I live, where I'm right now, has the most cases in the entire United States. It's sort of changed from being an East Coast thing where New York had the most cases to now my city has the most cases of anywhere in the United States. And that's pretty scary, especially with a 14-month-old, but it's also pretty devastating, besides just at a humanitarian level, to see all these hospitalizations and deaths, but also just it's wreaking havoc on our economy. Like I said, my weddings company is basically on hold, and I'm trying to do everything that I can to support my employees and take care of them in whatever way I can, but it's really difficult. But you know what, like, as crazy as this is to say, I did this presentation on Zoom earlier in the pandemic, about 2 months ago, and I started with the same point that the world is changing. Here we go. point number one is the world is changing. Yes, it is. And not just the virus. It is changing in a major way that we're being illustrated by our first global pandemic. I can't believe how right I was, because just since then, in the last 2 months, the world has changed, and there's been so much upheaval and so much new material to talk about that I was completely unaware of. It hadn't even happened at that point. Right now in the United States, there is a massive call to address racial injustice that has been festering in our country's history for hundreds of years. For hundreds of years, injustices that needed to be addressed are being addressed now in a serious way that has never really happened before. But even without it being about social upheaval or about the global pandemic, there are changes coming to our society which are going to so dramatically have an effect on what it means to be an artist, what it means to be a business owner, and indeed, I think what it means to be just a family person. Things like automation are coming. Things like that have the potential to radically change monetary policy are coming. And if you think that I'm exaggerating or that I'm being like a conspiracy theorist or something, consider the fact that 2 months ago when I was doing this presentation, oil was worth $. Like oil. Just, there are massive changes coming. So I don't think that I have to go down the list. What I want you guys to understand is just that you are alive during a time of massive change. We were all told as we were growing up, anybody who's around my age, I'm 38, we were told that technology was going to come along and basically like the graph was going to start going vertical. And we are on the vertical part of the graph now. I'm old enough to actually remember before cell phones, before the internet was, I mean, like, I guess it was in some very limited places when I was a really little kid, but for most people that I knew, like, you didn't have it. I've actually been editing video before you could do it with a computer, which really makes me feel old. The only reason I bring that up is not to highlight all the gray hairs on my head, but is to say that this generation, anybody who is out there who's around my age, understand that we're the last ones who are going to remember the gap, who are going to know about the time before the information age and then live into the information age. And that is a massive honor to be that generation and to have that. It's not to, I don't want to engage you in like a fear-based thing, like, watch out, disruptions are coming that are going to ruin everybody's life. And in one way, the virus is, very, very stressful. A lot of people around the world are dying from this illness, and then a lot of strain and stress are happening to people, like economically. I know that the Way Up North community has a lot of other people who are in the wedding industry, and I'm sure a lot of people are hurting really bad in that way, or dealing with a lot of unknown and fears and stuff like that. But here's the thing. I wonder if some of the social justice movements that are happening couldn't happen before everybody was forced to stay at home and reflect on what our country is about. And here's one other thing that I have to say. It's my habit to laugh when I'm uncomfortable, or to make jokes about the things that make me the least comfortable. There's nothing funny really about those social justice movements. I just laugh because I'm nervous. That hasn't worked out in all my romantic relationships all that well. The serious talks make me giggle kind of in a way. It's out of nerves. It's not because I'm making fun of any movement or making fun of the pandemic at all. It's just because it makes me uncomfortable. But now is the time to talk through uncomfortable moments. Anyway, so the world is changing, and chapter 2 is change generates potential. Anytime there's a change, anytime something shifts, there is all of a sudden the potential there's a new potential that's created. Whether it's a massive thing like a system being disrupted and ending, and then you see that there's all the potential for how a new system could be put together. The real thing about the potential that is being generated right now is that the stakes are high. Because the thing is, massive systems are being challenged right now. Like I was saying, like oil being worth negative dollars is a indicator of a massive systemic change that is happening. And so since that change is so huge, so too is the potential. I know that the word potential is like, I don't know, frequently used in like a recruiting sense or like in job interviews or something like that. I don't, in this case, only mean that it is a good thing. I mean that we have the potential now to shift things dramatically into a much better place, into a more fair society, one that's more just, one that leaves less people out, one that is more compassionate and loving. We also have the potential to shift into a more unjust society. Because when big systems of governance or just systems of the economy or like energy systems, any of those things that are being challenged right now, if they change, which I'm really hoping that we can change them, but if they change, there are always forces ready to step into that potential and take more control. And not all of those forces have everybody's best interests in mind. Take the issue of automation, for instance. Automation has the potential to eradicate hunger on the planet. It also has the potential for companies to create autonomous killing machines. And I think a lot of people have seen like that Black Mirror episode. It's terrifying to think that maybe at one point soon, we're gonna have robots that are like, autonomously programmed to kill humans. Now, there's been a huge like outcry from the scientific community, people from all different nations signing on a petition saying like we have to establish laws to never do that because it's going to actually turn out like real life Terminator. But will that call be heeded? There's a huge potential there. So that's an example of how change generates potential, and just to try to understand that the potential is massive right now because the change is massive. Now, again, I'm not trying to scare anybody. I know that was a scary example, and I'm not trying to scare you. What I'm trying to do is get people to responsibly accept the fact that the stakes right now are high because it's important, as what's coming up in a minute here. It's not really anything necessarily new. Change is a constant in this. We ourselves are constantly changing. Humans themselves are constantly in a state of flux, of constantly being revised. Your cells are constantly regenerating and dying. That's just how life is. And it's worth noting in a more kind of almost spiritual sense or something like that, to say that if we are constantly changing, we as humans are also constantly creating potential. That is the reality that we live in. And what we do with that potential is something that should be considered and should be maybe taken a little bit more seriously than it has been in the past. So the world is changing. Change generates potential. There's a huge potential for things to move in a massive way towards justice, towards equity, towards just the improvement of quality of life, the eradication of human rights abuses, towards a new level of abundance on the planet, towards a species that is unified enough to actually get off of this planet and go explore space. So many potential great things happening. And yes, on the other side, there is the potential for a more brutal, more authoritarian shift in the way that humans interact with each other. Things right now are under attack that are fundamental themselves, like truth. Truth as a concept is under attack. And you see more and more the ability for humans to just believe and accept things that aren't true because the process of believing something that is obviously untrue is being normalized or maybe even hyper-normalized. And if, again, that maybe it sounds like I'm being sci-fi or like I'm exaggerating, but there are conventions of people getting together organizing to come together and meet. And the theme, the point of the convention is to celebrate the fact that they know that the planet is flat. That is an example of a post-truth era. That is an example of what can happen when truth itself is under attack. And yeah, it's easy to write people off who are flat earthers. People are happy to go, what an idiot, or like write them off as conspiracy theorists. But the thing is, those people are people. And what I'm more interested in is understanding, how is this happening? Because, you know, the progress that we have as a species, as a society, is hard earned. People usually die in order to progress this species. There are people, you know, like 10 or 15 years before Galileo, I stood on the stage in way up north in Rome and explained this story because there's a statue to this guy, you know, not even a mile away from where I was standing on stage in Rome at way up north. There was a man who was a monk named Giordano Bruno. He basically like just cognized the fact that Earth was not the center of the universe. The sun was one of the many stars, and that maybe there were even collections of stars and planets elsewhere. These thoughts were completely radical, and so much so, especially because he was a monk, that they were actually heretic. They were heretical thoughts. You would think that as humans, when we have a new radical idea, something that is going to move us forward as a species, that we would embrace it as a species and say, great, now we know, that's awesome. Now we can build from there. It's unfortunately not really how it works. He was imprisoned for his heretical beliefs, and he was imprisoned for years because he was such an awesome guy that they really didn't want to kill him for his beliefs. And they just kept saying, maybe if we keep him in prison a little bit longer, he will eventually renounce these beliefs publicly and say, no, Earth is the center of the universe. It's flat. It doesn't work like that. But he said, no, I won't do it. I don't care what you do to me. I won't do it. And he was burned alive for those beliefs. So what I'm saying is that you enjoy the benefits of people who had to sacrifice in order to get our species to where it is. That is a fact for everybody. You enjoy the benefits and the privilege of living in the modern era because other people sacrificed and fought to progress the species to the place where it is. Many other people, and we stand on all of those people's shoulders. And that is our generation's the responsibility that comes with that, is to protect things that are important to the species, like truth. Change generates potential. The world is changing. Change generates potential. How are we going to do things like protect truth? How are we going to have an effect on making sure that this potential leans more towards a state of more justice, more equity, more compassion, better quality of life, less human rights violations? What can we as individuals do? Well, I believe that we can do a lot. I believe that each individual is very powerful. I was taught in college that I went to a pretty weird school that I don't know if I can derail the whole conversation to explain the school that I went to. But it was it had a spiritual component to the school. And okay, there's the moderators are saying it's okay to derail a bit. I went to a college called the Maharishi University of Management. Huh? And wow, I'm going to have to dramatically oversimplify this for the sake of time. Maybe some of you remember that the Beatles went through a phase, like an Indian phase, while they were hanging out with this guy, the Maharishi. He had a theory, again, not a spokesman for him in this moment exactly, because this is a dramatic oversimplification. He had a theory that if you taught large groups of people how to meditate together and they did it all at the same time, that would essentially like create world peace through good vibes. And in order to teach enough people a simple enough meditation technique to get those numbers of people to do it all together, he created a secular, non-religious, super simple mental technique and called it transcendental meditation. In the 60s, 70s, 80s, it became like very big. Like he was on the cover of Time magazine. And one generation down from that is me. So like my parents were really into that. And there is a U.S. Headquarters in a way of that movement in a tiny little town in the middle of nowhere in Iowa, in this town called Fairfield. And that is where the college is that I went to. It's called the Maharishi University of Management, or actually now it's called the Maharishi International University. So besides learning about filmmaking and digital media and stuff like that, I was also talking about like kind of the deeper parts of consciousness and about like the different states of awareness and some kind of exploration of concepts like that, according to the spiritual teachings of that guy, Maharishi Mahesh Yogi. So anyway, back to what I was saying is I was taught in college that the individual is the quantum unit of a society. And at the quantum level, things are very powerful. Imagine, of course, if you split an atom in half, there's a very big reaction. And that's the quantum unit I'm saying. So I have been taught to believe that individuals can do something and that individual action is very powerful thing. I also understand that no individual action on its own can probably fix or dismantle any of these huge systematic injustices or systems of oppression. And that's not exactly what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that you can't discount your own power as an individual. And at the end, I'll talk about some ways that we can very simply kind of focus the individual action into very productive measures. For now, I just want to say the first step is actually a willingness. The first thing that we need to do, and that I feel compelled to encourage people to do, is to be willing to say you're going to be a part of this change. Be at least willing to add your contribution. Because the thing is not only are you powerful as an individual, but you are also unique as an individual. And I believe that you have a contribution, that each of us has some contribution that no one else can give, and that all of those contributions are needed in order to have a society that is that lives up to the kind of high ideals that we're talking about. The first step is willingness, but the next step, before we get into action steps, which are going to come at the end, is to say that we need large groups of people to be in an optimum state of mind, in their best state of being. And there are a lot of ways that you can get into a better state of mind. But for me, one of the best ways and one of my favorite ways is to be creative, to be engaged with your own creativity. That's why this chapter is called Creativity is Potent. Not only because it is powerful in terms of what the reactions are going out into the world, which I'll touch on in a minute, but about what they are internally. To be in touch with your creativity is such a beautiful thing. Creativity is with you all the time. Your skills, your intuition, the things that you are drawn to make, the things that you are compelled to work on, or the concepts that you're thinking about are yours, and they're with you all the time. It's not some extra piece of gear. It's not based on whether or not you have you're rich or less wealthy or anything like that. It is yours, and it is with you all the time. It's, I think, a profound thing, because hesitate to get biblical with it, but why not? These are sort of biblical times, right? And I'm pretty just secular guy. I'm not really aligned with any one religion, and I'm also not somebody who talks shit about religions. I think it's people's own individual right to believe what they want to. I am aware that somewhere in the Bible it says that we are made in the Creator's image. Now, I think it's funny that for some reason I think that kind of is what's hit off a lot of people, to think that God looks like an old white man with like a puffy beard in the clouds wearing like a white robe. I don't think that's exactly the image that we were talking about. It's not like God looks like humans. However, I would say that humans are the animal that's on this planet that have the ability to create. And so we're made in the creator's image because we're also endowed with this dope ability to create things. And when we step into that part of our humanity, when we get in touch with our ability to create things, then we are stepping into our more divine nature, because that is being like the creator. And look, I can include like a bibliography on the YouTube link. I just want to say a lot of this stuff I'm not coming up with this myself. This is stuff that I've read or from little courses that I've taken or whatever. That is definitely, I got that from doing the artist's way. And I'm not quoting Julie Cameron exactly correct, but essentially what she's saying is the creator gave us the ability to create. And when we create, that is the gift that we give back to the creator. Now, if we want to get away from the spiritual tip a little bit and more just into a practical side, I will say that also being creative is healthy, because you have to be engaged with a sense of self in order to do it. Anybody who out there, who I'm sure you have creative experiences of all different kinds, but you can attest, I'm sure, to having successful work where you are just basically on fire, right? And then other times where you're not so successful at exactly the same task. What I would say is probably the number one common denominator around the times that you were not successful is that you were distracted, is that you were trying to do the creative process, but you were also had your awareness split, and you were also trying to do something else at the same time. You were trying to, and it's no fault of anybody's. It happens to everybody. And I'm in the next chapter, I want to talk about why I think it happens so frequently. But it's healthy. Being in a creative state is healthy because it is necessary to get in touch with yourself. When it comes to confronting a systemic injustice, like what's going on in the United States right now, where people are demanding an end to racial injustice in our country, there is a level of outrage that comes with it, right? And I think that outrage is actually completely appropriate. It is righteous to be outraged at the violation of human rights, for instance. That is correct. But it's not the whole equation. It's not that you can just stay in a perpetual state of outrage and post on social media and think that you're really confronting it. It's a matter of, I think what it's a matter of is getting in touch with the part of you that is so outraged, to hold on to that anger enough to get and analyze it for a second, where you go, why is that makes me so angry? Why is it that that's so wrong? And, in the case of like a human rights abuse, it's because those things, what we call human rights, are what we hold so precious because it is what binds us all together. It's what is the same about all of us, that we say that we should all at least have certain base levels of dignity and safety afforded us. And so when one of those is violated, it is violating a deep value amongst us as a species. So when you can have the outrage, and then when you can analyze why that actually makes you outraged, you can focus that rage and energy into action. And that action is where things can actually happen. So figuring out a way to get in touch with your creative self is just one of many ways to basically get in touch with just yourself. And that is really part of what makes it so potent. But I'm also saying that we need not only do we need masses of people to be at their best, in their best state of mind, we also need masses of people to make consistent individual actions. And that is called a movement. And that is how systems get changed.
Woohoo!
So probably a lot of you are thinking, yeah, man, I'm on board. I'm down to be creative. I love being creative. But what about this? What about that? What about this? What about that? I get you. Let's move on to the chapter, what stops us? If creativity is so potent, and if creativity is, like you said, our divine nature, indeed, I would say that it is also our natural state. It's not that humans are naturally not creative, and then some humans have this special ability to get into a creative state. I do think it helps to practice it, and I think that it helps, like anything, to do it frequently and consistently. However, I don't think that it's a specialized state of awareness. I think that it's humans' natural state of awareness to be creative. And yet, there are things that there are entire cultures that are in place and at play right now that are stopping us from being in that natural state. Now, I wish I could read the room, because I'm wondering if people are just like, yeah, totally. Or if people are like, what? This is an exaggeration. That sounds pretty sci-fi. That's a little bit esoteric or a little exaggerated. Let's just talk about cell phones for a second. There was always, or, for a very long time, there's been the stimulation of TV, but it didn't used to always be with you in your pocket. There was always the stimulation of being connected and communicating with your family and your network, but it was not always in your pocket, and the availability was not 24/7, 365. There was always places of overreactive stimulation and, sort of wild things like casinos, which are essentially like a proven method of distracting you to the point where you lose all your money. And people know that, and they're willing to go there and spend their money in order to have that experience. But the thing is that you weren't always able to gamble with the thing that's in your pocket all the time. Video games are awesome.
Yes.
I love them. And I grew up, I'm part of that generation of seeing like the progression of games go from super, super basic. I had an Atari, and now the other day I was messing around at somebody's house in virtual reality. Bananas. Like, it's awesome. But when did people have their video game console with them all the time? Now, I'm not being like a hater necessarily. I'm not saying that cell phones are evil. I think that it's brilliant that we live in an information age. And I think that it's amazing that everybody has a camera with them all the time that can actually shine a light of awareness into certain unjust situations that never would have been seen by the rest of the globe before. It's completely bananas and so powerful and so amazing and so new that essentially everyday citizens, I understand not everybody is in a position to be able to own a cell phone on the globe. There are a lot of people who still can't afford that, but more and more users come online every day. I mean, and not in small numbers, massive amounts of numbers more and more come online every day. I totally respect the fact that it is completely amazing that you, as an everyday citizen, can show the rest of the world something in like HD video for free instantaneously and communicate with our global community, and how powerful that is and what effect that has had. I want to respect that. And in a different way, holding that still in a yes, but I want to also just note that it might be like time to have a slight breakup with our phones. Because if it's just, if you're using it in that way, yes, it's powerful, but are you always using it in that way? Or are you like, have no judgment? Have you gotten to the point where you're giving your money away to like a weird little video game world that you're building to like, you know, like buy some extra troops for your army or something like that? Are you like, do you find yourself feeling like shit after you've been scrolling through social media? Do you find yourself numbing out essentially from being able to be connected to this information age? And okay, so here's a question from Mark, one of my main men over in Europe, is saying he wants to have a major breakup with his phone. How do you do it? I'll tell you how you do it. It's just like any other breakup. It fucking sucks and it's painful. It's hard and it's horrible and you miss it, and then life moves on. That's how you do it. When my baby was on the way, my partner and I decided that after reading a few things, we were really freaked out about some articles that we read about brain development and how it can be affected by screen time in babies that are less than 2 years old. And we said, okay, we're doing it. We're making a commitment. This baby is not going to be on a screen. She's not messing with screens. She's not looking at them until she's 2. Of course, we can't control it everywhere that we go, but at home we can control it. And what happened when we realized, oh my gosh, I don't want the baby to see that screen, is we realized how much we were actually on those devices. Even, I mean, man, it's gone completely unchecked. It's so brand new that it's gone unchecked, and nobody realizes that these phones are they're rude, man. Like, you can be at dinner with somebody and somebody just gets out their phone. One thing I noticed, like, that helped me is if you stop, it's kind of dumb that we still call it a phone. It's natural, you know what I mean? Like, we still say, oh, I filmed it, even though you mean video. Or I say, I taped it, even though there's no tapes anymore. It's the language just stays around, even though the technology moves on. But the thing is, it's not a phone, and it would be more appropriate if you called it your computer. And maybe if you said, hey, why are you getting your computer out right now? We're at dinner and are having a conversation. It's rude. Like, it would be fucking rude if you whipped out your laptop and just started like, hold on just 1 second, I just reply to these emails. That would obviously be rude. And it's the same fucking thing that everybody's doing right now. What happens if maybe you break up with your phone? I'm saying that maybe that's one way that you are less distracted and that you can get back into your natural state, a state of creativity where you can engage with yourself. Because the real theme here that I'm saying, and I'm going to say it a few more times, is that, again, to wrap things up, the stakes are high right now about like this huge changes. The potential is great. And we need individuals to be in touch with themselves and their creative intuition. And we need individuals making things. We need individuals having action happen. Like, the need is serious. And unfortunately, there is a great inertia to overcome in terms of just culturally, our families, our network, our social networks, our devices, our workaholic habits, our other addictions that come up for people. And again, no judgment. I understand how addiction works. Those things are going to try to stop you from being in your natural state. Those forces are leading you away from yourself. And they're great fun, man. You know, gambling is fun. Drinking alcohol is fun. Drugs feel fucking great. That's why so many people do them. Your phone, like scrolling and scrolling and scrolling, is brand new and totally insane and so fun that you can see what people, friends of yours from all different areas of your life, from all different around the planet, are just cluing you in and generally curating it in this weird way, which is like, check out the best fucking thing that happened to me. I mean, they're not really like, you know, showing you like, there's no Instagram post of like, oh man, I'm traveling through Southeast Asia and have diarrhea and I'm throwing up at the same time. Like, that's not really in the feed. It's a great fun feed of like, wow, they're doing great. They're doing great. They're doing great. They're doing great. But what is that doing to our brains? And what is, more importantly, how much space do any of us have left to really consider what kind of world we want to build? And the thing is, there's an urgency, because it's like I said, it's not sci-fi. It's not like these changes are coming. Watch out. I'm telling you, these changes are coming. Automation is coming. Revolutionary changes to healthcare are coming. Revolutionary changes to monetary policy are coming. They're here. They are actively happening. Systems are being dismantled and new systems are going to be in place. So the need is urgent. When we need you to be in this state of mind is now. When we need you to be acting and being creative and using your skills, your talent, your mind, your heart for the good of our species is now. We need it now. You know, I got to be careful talking about something like this. I want to, a couple weeks ago, a really old friend of mine, who I'd known since I was a little kid, died. He was a severe alcoholic, and he lost his fight to alcohol. I just talked to him really not that long ago. But I won't get to talk to him again. That's what it is to be human. Besides the systematic changes that are happening, the urgency is inherent in what it means to be human, which is that this life, this glorious, amazing, wonderful experience of what it is to be alive is finite. It is limited. It is not guaranteed. And I'm not trying to be morbid about it. This thought actually, to me, is a beautiful thing, is an appreciative thing, from a space of gratitude. But you do not know what time you have left. Nobody knows. You don't know how much time you have left yourself. And you don't know how much time you have left with everybody else. So besides what I'm talking about, which is I'm going to move on to the chapter of Let's Do It. It's important that you understand that the urgency is there, because that is a reality. And man, when I said I want to be careful about this, I'm not using this emotional moment to manipulate you. I'm not using my friend's memory in an exploitative way for gain. This is free. I'm not using it to pivot or sell you anything, except that I'm using it to say, look, man, I had a powerful reminder of the fact that somebody that you just took a photo of or just talked to on the phone the other day, or are old work buddies with, or someone in your family, you might have just spoken to them for the last time. And it's not to break your heart. It's just to make you realize that, like, what would you want to say to them? How would you want to be? If you don't know when you're going to go, and you don't know when anyone else is going to go, the time to be the person that you want to be to those people and to yourself is now. It's important that you understand that it's now. Now is the time to make those changes and to be that person. So anyway, you might have always seen me drinking a beer or something like that on stage at Way Up North. In fact, I think this is the first presentation thing that I've ever given sober. I understand also it's not even noon here in Los Angeles, so that is also working it to my advantage. But when my friend passed away, I decided to take a break from the sauce, and I love beer, and I love wine, and I love quite a few boozes as well. Not so big on vodka, but the rest of them I like. And you know what? I like drinking with people, and I like going to bars and stuff like that. But I decided to honor my friend and to take a break away from the thing that took his life away, in order to focus my energy in a way that was productive, and to try to make some significant changes and leaps in not only the type of person that I am, but in the relationships that I have, and in just to try to gain some mental clarity and focus about the type of things that I want to contribute to the world. So cheers, here's to it. No shame. No shame at all. If anyone out there is drinking a beer or a glass of wine right now, I know it's nighttime in Europe, and all I can say is that I wish I could cheers you with a tasty red or something like that. But I'm in a different place. So, okay, the world is changing. Change creates potential. Creativity is potent and beautiful. So why don't we do it? We understand why is because there's an endemic culture of distraction trying to stop us from doing it. And yet there is an urgent need to do it. So the last chapter is let's do it. How can we start doing it? Like I said, the first step is a willingness to do something about the injustices that you see in your life, or just the things that you, not necessarily even injustices, just to the willingness to say that you are going to step away from distraction and step away from being numbed by the cascade of beautiful, technologically advanced ways which we numb ourselves to everything that's going on in the world. And you are going to engage with the present moment. I know that's a real catchphrase these days of like self-helpy spiritual world, but I'm saying that's what I'm saying. You're going to do it by stepping into now and assessing what it is that you find important. I would never be so bold as to prescribe to you what I think your actions are. Yes, I have causes, social justice causes that I'm aligned with. And yes, I see there being a great need among many different levels, from global down to addressing things that are happening in the United States, because I live here and I'm from here, to things that are happening in California, to things that are happening in Los Angeles, to things that are happening in my neighborhood, down to things that are happening in my family and my close network of friends, and then even things that are happening in myself. All of those places are an appropriate place to start doing the thing that you actually feel is the important thing to do. And I think that first comes willingness, and then comes some inward stroke of reflection, some sense of honoring the fact that when you are creative, you are stepping into your own divinity as a human. You're in kind of like at your best as a human. And if you can just at least do that part and then make a commitment to follow through with it, you are going to have your own creative intuition is going to tell you where you should go with it. It's going to point you in a place of what is most important for you. I think it is also part of our culture is to, and like especially on social media, is to say we just have to do something. We have to act. We have to do this. In the work that I've started to do, just really briefly, like I'm trying to I took a long, hard look in the mirror in terms of addressing white supremacy and race in the United States, and looked at my companies, and they were not the way that I really want them to be. And I'm in the process of trying to change and retool with my business partner the operations, the branding, the very core, the purpose of what it means to have a company like Shark Pig, so that it becomes a machine that works for towards justice, and a machine that works with purpose. In that process, which I just want to say, I'm not an educator along those lines. I myself am getting an education right now. But part of that education, I attended like a digital town hall about reimagining business. And in that town hall, an educator clued me into somebody's like program, a woman named Barbara J. Love, and her program is called Liberatory Consciousness. And she broke it down in the 4 A's, and that they have to go in order: awareness, analysis, then action, and then accountability. And so I had the awareness, I was trying to skip over the analysis of what it was into action. And I think that that's a big thing that people are all, everything in this world right now is like geared around instant satisfaction. And it's fun again, like it's great fun to be instantly satisfied by something, to get like a little dopamine hit from here and there or whatever. However, it won't work for all things that you're trying to do. And I think what I'm really calling for people to do is, connect with themselves, and then to have masses of people acting. And that's something that would be really truly great. That would be greatness. However, I think that instant gratification is more in the realm of mediocrity, not greatness. I don't think it makes you great. I don't think great results come from it. And so I am going to say, or at least for me right now, I can tell you I'm relating to being like, I had the awareness, or to go back to what I was saying before, I had the outrage and feeling paralyzed. What can I do about this? Well, when this person told me before action comes analysis, I started reading. I started listening to podcasts. I started educating myself about the very things that I'm interested in doing and changing and being a part of the conversation. And then staying with it as difficult feelings came up from that education and from this new knowledge that I'm getting, and analyzing it. And I can tell you, it is having a profound effect on what kind of actions that I want to take. But I can tell you this, that the actions that I will take as a company, and I know that a lot of people in this community are entrepreneurs and business owners themselves. The thing that's so powerful about a company is a company has to manage to exist. It has to operate. It has expenses. It spends money. It essentially is a machine, and it does actions. If you are able to point that machine in a certain direction, then that as a company, it's going to keep rolling in that direction. And that is something that is more powerful than just individual actions. Even if I lose my companies, which is surprisingly after 10 years is on the table, that might happen depending on, what happens with this pandemic. Even if I lose my companies, I will still be an activist. I will still address the things within myself that I'm not satisfied with, and within my community that I'm not satisfied with. And with that community extends all the way up to a global level. Like at a global level, I don't fucking understand why we can't make a shift in energy policy when we all know that like the sun is shining on my house and it's pure energy right now. I could go into an example at any level of it. But what I'm encouraging you to do is to have the willingness, make some time and space to get in touch with yourself and really deeply analyze what it is that's important to you, and what it is that you want to change, what it is that you want to create. And again, this doesn't have to only be limited to like activism or donating to an organization or philanthropy. It's important in times like this to have art. It's important for people to give their talent and skills, like your services, to somebody who can't necessarily afford those services. Or it's important to just hold up a mirror to society with your art. Again, like I was saying, we live in a time where truth itself is being attacked. And I know the Way Up North community is a lot of photographers. You have the talent and the skill and the gear with you right now to pick up a camera and show society a mirror of itself, to do something honest. You have that with you right now. Do you know how powerful that is? I'm not going to tell you what to take a picture of. I'm not going to tell you that. I'm not even going to say that because you know how to use a camera, that should be the thing that you do. Honestly, if you make the time to get in touch with yourself and figure out what's important, and you commit to actually doing something with it, it very well may be in a field that is not your field of expertise creatively. That doesn't matter. That's totally still good. It's like not everything can be monetized and commoditized and stuff like that. And I know that we live in a culture where we have to take our creative skills and apply them to making money if we want to even have a pseudo chance of doing our creativity, you know, as a way of making a living. However, that's not the limit of what I'm saying. That has to do with commerce. That has to do with with careers, but that's not even what I'm talking about. I'm saying there might be something in you that is like, you know what, this is really important, and it has to do with a creative skill set that's totally outside of your skill set. It might not even be, it is not limited to visual arts. Like, try to think of it like that. It's creative to coalition build. It is creative to build a community like Way Up North has done. Like, here's the thing. It could be emotional, spiritual, artistic. It can have to do with money. It could be fundraising to find a cause that you really stand behind and just saying, you know what, I just wonder if we could raise 50,000 euros for this cause. I bet you could. If it was important to you, I bet you could. In fact, I know that you can. And yes, there are limits to what each individual can do. But if we could encourage each other, if we could support each other and make room and make it, maybe even shift culture in some way to make it cool and normal to be in touch with what is actually important to us and to be creating from that space, as opposed to making it cool and even, you know, necessary or required to be endlessly scrolling through your phone, to be always available to emails from anyone and everybody, to be workaholics, to be alcoholics or drug users. And again, I really like alcohol and I really like drugs. I'm not judging anybody. I'm just saying that those are the things those are all the things that are being romanticized, that are being taught and kind of shoved down our throats as being what makes you a good person, what makes you successful. And I'm saying that along with questioning these other large systems of injustice, that is a system that should be questioned and have its feet held to the fire too. I say we determine what makes us successful. So, all that said, I hope I didn't get too fire and brimstone with any of you. Again, I just want to say it is a complete honor to have this community that you guys all maintain, and to be able to come into this community and share my perspective with you. And I also want to recognize that I understand it is a complete privilege on my part as well to be in this scenario, and, you know, to even have this house and this laptop and this time to be able to do that. For me, I realize that for right now, like, when I am in touch with my creativity, the thing that comes up for me is that I feel that I want to leverage all of my privilege, my resources, my skills, my talents together to make change, to make things better. And you don't have to be an outcast. You don't have to give up all your money. You don't have to destroy your companies. You don't have to leave society, you know, in order to change it. In fact, I think that my most powerful tools of changing things are going to be my companies. If, again, I hope, unless, you know, I go out of business, in which case I'll have to find a new company. Or maybe I'll just throw my phone away and start working at the bar inside Chili's too in the Dallas airport, and you guys all have to come visit me in person. It'll be the only way to get in touch with me. Who knows? I don't know. All right, I'm never really good at signing off on these things, but I'm gonna go. All right. I hope you guys are all well. Hit me up, okay, if you want to chat about anything, and stay safe.